Hi everybody, we're back for another Deck Tech here at the Show and Tell Show. I'm joined today with Greg Mitchell.
Hey.
Hello. Local Seattle Legacy ringer. He has few accomplishments to his name. You've top-8'd SCG Atlanta with Tess, and you top-4'd SCG Columbus and outright won SCG Seattle with Bug Delver. In addition, he also helped make the deck 10 pins a thing, so if you've ever lost to it, blame him. What are you playing for us today, Greg?
Today I'm playing Blue-White-Red Delve Control.
Delve Control. Okay, yeah, let's take us through it.
Sure. So Dig Through Time is probably the best control spell to come out since Terminus, I want to say.
I mean, no hyperbole. It's cool.
Yeah, the card's insane. It's a better fact or fiction and really enables an old school style of counter all your threats and remove all your threats and then just eventually win. The deck was originally popularized, or I guess presented by Carson Cotter, and me and some other friends have been developing the deck since then. If you're familiar with the original list, you'll notice it's gone through some pretty big changes. He originally had 2 Stoneforge and a Batterskull as the only finishers.
And at the moment it looks like you've completely removed that package.
That's right. So we found out that Stoneforge just tended to die. Sure, tutored to Batterskull, which is great, but you often didn't have time to actually get around to casting it and having it resolve. It stabilizes the board really well when it does resolve, but Blue-Red Delver puts so much pressure on you that sometimes that just doesn't happen.
Yeah, so it seems like going to the threats that you do have in the deck since you got rid of Batterskulls, you're kind of on 2 different ends of the spectrum here.
Exactly.
We have 4 Young Pyromancer and 1 good old standard favorite Banslayer Angel.
Yeah, good old M10 powerhouse, right? Yeah, so the idea of Young Pyromancer is it's sort of like a mini moat that also attacks. In an earlier iteration of the deck, we had a moat that was actually quite good, but people brought in wear tears and other enchantment removal anyway because they just thought we were miracles. So I wanted something that would put pressure on miracles and try to control the board, because another big way the deck loses is the board's not stable before it can turn the corner with digs and card advantage.
Fair enough. And then the Banslayer Angel is just a big, huge threat that kills them really fast.
That's true. And also the big top-end threat wants to gain life, because often you'll get down to super low life totals against the burn decks. And you really want something to just put the nail in the coffin. Like, once you get one swing in with Baneslayer, chances are they're not coming back from that.
Indeed. Also doesn't die to Bolt or Abrupt Decay, which are the 2 big removal spells in the format at the moment, so...
Exactly. The nice thing about this threat configuration is they die to completely different things. So if an opponent sees one threat but not the other, often it'll leave them just cold to it post-board.
Fair enough. To find these threats, you have all kinds of ways to dig through your deck. 4 Brainstorms, 4 Ponder, fairly standard. 2 Preordains, which is not something you generally see outside of things like Omnitel. And then, of course, your control overlord, Jace the Mind Sculptor, in 2 different languages it looks like here.
I'm working on it. I don't play Jace too much.
So yeah, 10 dig spells, 3 Jaces, all good with Young Pyromancer.
The original list had 2 Treasure Cruise in it. I think that Treasure Cruise was not better than Preordain, because I wanted to just have a spell I could always cast to trigger Pyromancer to find the thing that I needed. Preordain sees the same number of cards as Dig, although of course it doesn't draw them. I think that might be the slot that's most up for debate, is only having 4 Delve spells. This deck puts a ton of cards in its graveyard, and once you get the ball rolling with 1, it's pretty hard to stop, and you really just want to chain them together.
Having played against this deck before in a tournament and having the guy play 2 dig through times on the same turn, it was quite dispiriting. And sadly not that uncommon. As far as ways to say no, we have our removal and counterspell suites over here. We're running 10 counters and 7 removal spells in various configurations. Any thoughts as to this precise configuration?
Yeah, so I'm 1 counterspell less than the original starting. I only have 2. I think that's a concession to Pyromancer. I want to play a few more proactive spells. Leaving up double blue is a bit hard. Pyroblast is obviously great against the blue-infested field, but it also can be used as a sort of mana store for Dig Through Time. Can also just make a token because you can Pyroblast any random thing. The earlier builds had 2 Engineered Explosives and Academy Runes, Academy Runes doesn't play very well with Pyromancer, both because a lot of times you'll set it on 0 to kill Delvers and their Pyromancers, and also because it's not an instant or sorcery, so you don't get an elemental. I'm banking pretty hard in Pyromancer to clog up the board. Against Elves, it's going to be a big handicap, because they have dudes that you need to kill, and you can't block Craterhoof Trample.
Yeah, a little tricky.
But hopefully 7 removal spells will be enough to just slow them down until you can get your counterspells online.
Indeed. And then last bit we have in the main deck are the lands. You play a lot of lands for a Legacy deck.
21. It's actually pretty low for a control deck.
Yeah, actually, looking over it, that is a lot less than I was expecting. But, so 9 fetches, 6 duels, and then a bunch of basics.
Mm-hmm. So another concession of Pyromancer is that I have to play more early red spells. Both Bolt and Pyromancer encourage me to play more Volcanics. So you see that there's 3 Volcanics as opposed to the more typical 2. That's because of that. And so what ended up happening is I just cut Academy Runes for a Volcanic to try to make the deck a little more consistent. I didn't actually bring back Engineered Explosives with Academy Runes too often, although it was very good when it did happen.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very powerful loop to get into, but if it's irrelevant in the game, then it isn't doing anything.
Mm-hmm.
Alright, so, with this deck, we're going to have you play a few games. We'll come back for the sideboard.
Sounds good. Time to battle.
Let's do it.
Do a little high roll.
Alright.
9. Beat that.
That's not even good.
Above statistical averages.
Oh! So lucky!
Crushed it.
Yeah, well,
Crushed it.
use all your luck in the die roll. That's
It's a
fine.
skill game.
Alright, so we are here on the Show and Tell show. We have Greg over here piloting Rocka Delve Control.
That's right.
That is blue, white, red for those of you who weren't playing, 10 years ago.
Apocalypse
Whatever that
is
was.
more than 10 years ago,
We
right?
also have Shawn Yu here, helping with the commentation. Was what?
You haven't fan out the cards. Cute.
That's fine, they can see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This
So, against him, wearing our trusty Cone of Silence headphones over there, is going to be Zach playing UR Delver. Zach's going to lead with an island.
That's an interesting start. Normally the Blue-Red Delver wants to play a threat on turn 1, so I wonder if he might have mana issues because he played a basic island.
This looked like a pretty obvious keep for you, just looking at what your opening 7 was.
Yeah, I kept a blue source and cantrips, which is basically the best you could ask for with this deck.
And you already had a second land, so it's not like you were relying on the cantrips to find you.
Exactly. I don't need either of these. Even in the dark, if I had no idea what he was playing, they're too slow. I'm looking for more lands or more interaction.
And there you go.
Get what I want. Go ahead. You can't hear us, can he?
No. He's mostly going to be relying on hand signals and whatnot.
So he's tanking. He's got a tough decision.
Leading off the island, okay, so he does have both colors.
Okay, so that indicates to me that he has a bunch of permission in his hand, because there's no other reason to keep a hand without a turn 1 threat. So
Force doesn't seem like a bad pickup here.
Force is fine. What I'm really looking for here is a way to kill his Pyromancer. So I want to do that with Force backup, which means... so the question is whether I want to play Brainstorm or Ponder. I don't have any cards I particularly want to put back, except maybe Counterspell. It's quite bad in this matchup. I guess I might as well do that. This deck is interesting because it uses Brainstorm very unlike a control deck. Most control decks want to hold Brainstorm as long as possible. This deck wants to deploy its threats as quickly as possible, and just build up a bunch of cards in its graveyard. So in that sense, it's much more like Storm or Delver.
You just need the massive cards more than...
Exactly.
That was not the best Brainstorm for you.
No, this is fine, but...
Getting the Young Pyromancer is fine, but if you're looking for an answer for his right now...
That's right.
Do you think you could stabilize if you're able to resolve a dig through time without having found removal?
So he's gonna...
It's possible. Daze is definitely good here. I think that's a solid read on his part. Like, considering it just brainstormed and shuffled, I'm definitely looking for something. And it's not clear if he'll get too many more chances to Daze.
From my experience, a daze on a removal spell targeting a Swift Spear is often fine because it means they have less velocity in the subsequent turns, and the deck is very linear in that fashion. However, Young Pyromancer is a much more aggressive clock, and it's more problematic for you, so we'll see.
Will you hold your hand closer to the camera? Because I think you're leaning over to show it to them, and it's ending up really small on the screen, I think.
Okay. Wait, you're watching my hand?
Well, I couldn't. I mean, I just looked over to see what the shot looked like.
Mm-hmm.
Can I stand here?
Yeah, go for it.
Can you guys still see?
I can see fine enough.
So, so there's an option of forcing the daze, but given that I think that he is force in hand, that's just going to end up losing me value.
That's an interesting read, just based on the way he, what he kept, or the way he sequenced his first few turns.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So now's the turn where we see if he actually has a bunch of ammo he's just been holding for the Pyromancer.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the nice thing is, leading on a turn 2 mountain means he's less likely to be able to cantrip. He might bolt your face, but it's not as scary as he's like cantrip to generate tokens.
Mm-hmm. It's worth considering forcing the brainstorm.
Yeah, it was a bit awkward you ripped right after the Pyromancer got played.
Definitely.
But he would have had the days anyway, so.
Yep. I'm at 16. That was definitely a good draw. The question is if I want to play around days, and I think I don't, because Pyromancer will make value even if he dazes the swords, which prevents him from attacking.
Thing to consider is, though, he has more removal than you do.
That's true, but if he's burning removal on my Pyromancer, that's not a huge deal.
Fair.
Like, it's not going to my face.
Mm-hmm. Now, if he did use the removal on your Pyromancer, would you force back?
If he used removal, I'm not sure.
You have priority.
So, yeah, this is what Shawn was talking about. This is...
It's still on the stack. Is it worth saving it?
I'm not sure. So given that he is... I think it probably is because it stabilizes the board so much.
So
And clearly he doesn't have daze, otherwise he'd daze the plow.
Good read.
So yeah, you definitely daze first. So you're at 15.
Go ahead. And now we're at a position where the board's essentially stable and my hand's just gas.
He does still have quite a few cards, which is not necessarily the best, but...
Right. He probably could untap and Treasure Cruise here. I'm going to block 2 of them. I take 1, putting me at 15.
14. The force put
right.
me down.
That's good.
If you were to dig soon, what type of interaction would you be looking for? What type of cards?
Given that he just played Delver, ooh, that was good. So now, right, so he has 2 cards. He could double daze, which means I want to play this Volcanic Island. So with this Volcanic Island, I can look for either a Pyroblast or
Swords?
Or swords. And Pyromancer triggers.
Yeah, it looks like you've successfully cleared.
Yeah, so this is
the
really
tests.
showcasing the power of Pyromancer. Baneslayer is a huge trump against him.
So it did miss on all of the removal,
That's true.
but we're not in a position where that's going to matter too much longer.
So I think it's just these 2. It's a little unfortunate that I can't protect Baneslayer, but I think what I do is I Council's Judgment Delver if it flips, and then if he has a force, he'll force that, which allows me to untap and Baneslayer, and I'm not low enough where I need to resolve it or I die.
Do you think you would fall behind if he resolved the Treasure Cruise here? Or do you think your board's fine as is?
Treasure Cruise...
No, that was interesting. He could have used the fetch land to scry with the Delver in combination with the Delver, and he chose to look like on upkeep or on end step.
Didn't he cast Brainstorm?
Yeah, but he
Oh,
brainstormed
okay.
last turn, so he knew whatever was on top wasn't going to flip the Delver.
Missed that.
Blind flip gets him a probe, which
It's very good for him.
I'd rather he draw it now without a Swift Spear or a Pyromancer on board, assuming
True.
that's not one of the cards he's holding on to.
He probably...
Unlikely.
I doubt it, but
So given this, he knows to cantrip for a force. He might not force Council's Judgment if he does draw it. I think it's still correct to Council's Judgment Delver because that gives me time to find Counterspell backup for Baneslayer. There's no
Sure.
need to rush it out there.
Maybe preserving your life total, especially with a Pyromancer on board and Banslayer in hand. Sounds like a winning strategy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
gets the maximum value for Cruise.
So that's not good. How many cards? 5? 5.
5 cards. Alright, we just have to hope they're mostly reactionary or lands or something.
Right.
Oh, that's not
You
good.
don't mind Swift Spear that much. You could clog up the ground for days. I'd rather Fade Bolts actually, but it looks like you might have one right here.
Yep. So now, I was going to raise the question if I should try to double block or if I should just chump, but obviously. So now, this game is going to last a bunch of turns. I think I'm better off just trading.
So,
I agree.
You take 5, we're down to 9 actually.
So he has 3 cards left. So I can stabilize the board.
Well, you only have 2 white sources, so
Yeah.
seems reasonable. Show him the unknown card. How many cards are in his hand?
He has
3.
3.
Okay. That Swift Spear might actually represent more damage.
You think so?
I think it's likely.
We're at 9, so unless he has running bolts though, it shouldn't be end the game now damage.
Yeah, it looks like there's a cat in the way.
So this is a card in case you didn't see. Definitely a little bit unfortunate. If this were, if this spell were EE, it would be much better in this situation. So that's something to think about. The reason it would be much better is because I could both cast swords and cast EE and pop it because of color issues.
Yeah.
So I'm at 9, taking 3 at least. It's starting to get to a point where I need to just drop Baneslayer on the table and hope he doesn't have force.
I think you do that next turn. Maybe ripping a land, which would allow you to play around days but not force.
Yeah, ripping a Tundra would be insane.
Oh yeah, that's quite good. And I would actually probably just
Yep,
He is flooding
I'm at
out about
6.
as hard as we need him to, so
that's
Well,
true.
I think if he had a bolt there, he would have pointed at your face. So
Probably.
yeah. So hope you rip Tundra here.
that one's
That's-
interesting.
Quite good. That's definitely a strong case to do this.
Yes, I agree. Now he has perfect information, which is
It's fine.
Yes.
So definitely I do this on my turn.
Yep.
He can, he has a draw step, and he can also hardcast Force next turn if he untaps.
it's a good thing to notice.
A lot of people I feel try to get way too fancy with instants just
Definitely.
because they can.
Yeah. It's definitely not
True.
something you want to do against this deck, though.
Yep. I think it's interesting he played that Volcanic Island last turn. Like, I'm trying to figure out what that represents. It could... I feel like hardcast Force is the only thing it could.
I feel like, yeah, I'm fairly certain he had to have drawn that Arid Mesa.
That's fair. Yeah.
because otherwise there's no reason for him to play the Volcanic Island other than he can then hardcast Force the next turn.
He might not actually have a fetchable land. If he has the Volcanic Island in hand, and also the Arid Mesa, he might not be able to fetch a land with the Arid Mesa, because he has 4 Volcanics showing and a mountain.
Very observant of Greg. Actually, since this is my deck, I can confirm that, in fact, there are no fetchable lands for Zach.
So I think he might be trying to daze one of the Volcanics back, but... so the question is, do I play this into daze? How many... 2 cards? So you've pondered twice. I don't think he's shuffled. I think chances are fairly high that if he doesn't have a threat, he must have counterspells. So there's no reason to just jam it.
I mean, you at least attack, right?
No.
No attack?
No, he has haste creatures. I'm not gonna win. I'm not gonna win through combat damage. Like, not without a Baneslayer.
Conservative line, but I think it has merit. That helps. Well,
It
no, if you
might.
do land.
Go ahead.
It might help later on.
He would have to hardcast Force in this situation.
Yeah. But the aggressive deck is drawing more land than you right now, which is just an interesting position.
How many
He's
lands does your version
definitely
of
flooding
UWR run?
out.
He likely has a boat in hand.
I'm a little suspect of him playing out so many lands.
So 1 card in hand. That was an excellent draw.
Definitely. Can't complain
And
about
those were not.
Well,
You do need
I do
a
need
land at
a
this
land.
I think you could find something better, but it's worth considering to play
Yeah.
on days.
I agree. I'd rather hit a cantrip at this point. Like, there's so many
like that.
like this. Like, there's so many good draws. If I had a dig, I'm probably not losing this game. Jace would be very, very good here, because it's just bait. I'm definitely casting Brainstorm, even though it's not really good value. Can you hear? Oh. So
Wow,
I did brick on lands, but... oops.
Is there any value in keeping the... Well, I mean, you're going to draw whatever anyway, but the Spell Pierce, I guess, is a little...
Right, it might do something. And since I've already committed to this line of not casting Baneslayer into days, there's no reason to have it in hand. Well, I guess he knows about it, so go ahead.
And now you're at 6 lives, so the Swords of Plowshares actually represent some buffer against a double bolt.
I didn't think about that. That's a good point.
It's very likely that the last card in his hand is a Lightning Bolt, or a Force of Will, maybe
So
days.
He doesn't have any more fetchable lands. I'm not sure why he's fetching here.
He might have one more island. I mean, he is flooding out hard enough, he might just be doing it out of frustration of drawing all the lands.
That's certainly fair. I think there's a question of if I swords this or not.
I think you would declare blockers first and then swords regardless if you commit to that line.
Ooh, shit. So, just
So, no, kids, don't spew information if you can help it.
so there's a question of if I cast Brainstorm here or not. There's really no pressure on me, so I'm just going to pass. If he plays something that I have to react to, I can always... So
Do you have a
here
Pyroblast to find?
I have 2 Pyroblasts and 2 Counterspells that I can find. I think the upside here is definitely worth it.
Oh, definitely.
So this definitely punishes me for not
Brainstorming?
brainstorming on my turn. I think I put these 2 back and dig. I leave up Pierce because he's likely to have that hardcast force that I'm trying to play around.
Yeah.
So if I'm playing around it, I might as well play around it.
Well, he actually has 7 lands on the board, but as you two have observed, he may not have enough fetchable lands to actually be able to play around Pierce, so it's
Right,
an interesting
exactly.
situation.
So I'm going to exile these 6. Him letting that resolve really tells me that he probably doesn't have counter magic. Otherwise, I would imagine he would play it.
That's a brick on a counterspell, but
As usual, it's insane.
I strongly suspect the last card is either a daze or a bolt. So
I think you're right.
I do enjoy how all of your digs have not found you the thing you're looking for, but just all of the other insane options in your deck.
I think the safest play is take Jace and Plow, and then with those two, he either counterspells Jace. Oh, his last card? No, his last card can't be Pyroblast.
no, it's not. I do agree with taking Plow. I think there may have been some merit in taking perhaps Pyromancer or the Brainstorm, but certainly you have 2 bombs to test him with now.
Well, this could all be problematic. If he has an answer for that now,
Could be.
but he doesn't, so
Yep.
we're not bad off yet.
Mm-hmm.
Our life total is a little low if he is able to put any substantial board presence out.
Mm-hmm. Thinking about next turn, I'm not sure if I want to... If I draw land, I definitely play Banslayer. Because I can pierce a... Depending on what he plays next, I
Oh,
might be...
sorry.
Resolving a Ponder, a Brainstorm as a Ponder is something that many of us have done when playing these decks.
It
Unfortunately...
is technically legal as long as you don't do the shuffle option.
Right.
Alright.
Okay, at this point, I really want to hit a land, which makes me wonder if taking Jace instead of land is correct.
Well, that's...
As usual,
He has 1 card in hand, and you're it.
1, 2. I think I might as well cast it because I can find another land and empty the board. So I'm playing super conservatively with the Banslayer, which I feel like I should have had an opportunity to play it by now. So I wonder if I'm... Oh, I'm just not sure what's happened there. This was
This is...
not exciting.
Well, you get a land, but this is not...
Definitely
What you're hoping
fetch
for.
land because I'm already at 6. And I'll...
Well, another thing to consider is now you have 10 of the cards that you know at the bottom. Do you want to shuffle some of them up? I think that Pyromancer may be a good draw, but only if you could stabilize the current situation.
Sure. So in this situation, I think I play Jace, and if he forces, that's fine. If he dazes, that's not ideal, but fine. And I bounce the token.
I agree with that play.
Looks like you've letting it happen, so...
Good.
And Jace goes down to 2.
And I think with the current situation, you're ecstatic if he kills the Jace instead of you.
Absolutely.
A bolt would be enough to do it.
Kill Jace.
Kill you.
Yeah. Which might be an argument for taking Island instead of the fetch land.
Alright, so here he cracks a fetch land with 4 duels and 2 basics in play, so you'll be able to get more information out of his deck.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he is now realizing that there are no more fetchable lands with an Arid Mesa.
It's very possible he knew that anyway. It's very possible he knew that anyway, but is trying to delve for... trying to feed his graveyard for delve, which
Yeah.
looks like...
Looks like that's true.
that's
So
fine.
if I lose this game, I think it's pretty likely that I just wasn't aggressive enough with his Banslayer.
And there's a cruise.
I think you play Pierce right here.
We're
can't.
tapped out.
Oh, okay. I thought you had a man open.
But you are correct. If it were an option.
Yep. So the chances that I'm winning are pretty unlikely.
That does not help.
And unlikely. Just
And that does it.
Yeah. Okay.
Alright, that was interesting.
Sorry, that's it. Okay.
If nothing else, okay, so let's go back to the game now. This opening hand,
It's fine on the play. If it were on the draw and he dazed me, that would be pretty bad.
I believe it's keepable. It's got
Oh,
3
certainly.
cantrips. The counterspells are a bit weak in this matchup, but On the play, it's much stronger.
And I think we're trying to do this in the dark.
As relative to the dark as you can. Like, assume you're playing in like a top 8 where you'd have deck lists, so you know what deck he's on, but not necessarily, you know.
A top 8 is like the opposite of in the dark. So again, he has no turn 1 threat.
That was a great draw for you. And
Absolutely.
I think you'd be afforded patient here.
Yep, totally agree. I think there's a question of whether or not I brainstorm on my end step. I don't think so.
If he has no threat, I think you could do that.
If
I would
he's-
brainstorm in response to a Pyromancer too, just to avoid giving him an opportunity to cast a spell after a Pyromancer resolves.
I'd rather just cast swords on it and not have it get
Like that. I like
Dazed.
waiting to brainstorm, if nothing else. If you wait till your turn, you see one card deeper.
exactly, yeah. And the worst case scenario is a brick, so I want to minimize the chances of that.
If you do brainstorm lock yourself, you'd rather have the extra card than... Yeah.
This is definitely a greedy keep. In Miracles, I think there's like not a chance I would keep it, but I have more.
I would definitely keep that as a Miracles player.
Seriously?
Yeah.
That's so
well, I
greedy.
mean, give me a counterbalance instead of that Pyromancer, and perhaps a Preordain is a, I don't know,
Ponder?
Terminus. Well, with Ponder I certainly keep. Yeah, I guess I wouldn't keep a 2 brainstorm hand with just basic value.
That was not what I wanted to see. But... Okay.
That
Didn't-
helps things a bit. Not great. But you at least get your second source of blue.
Mm-hmm. So I want to hide. I think I want to play Pyromancer with Counterspell backup, which means I'm going to be playing it 2 turns from now. So I want to hide the second Counterspell or the first dig. Probably the second Counterspell.
I think a different consideration is if you jam the Pyromancer right now, he might daze, which, I mean, is unfortunate, but trying to cast Counterspell on Pyromancer on the same turn is pretty difficult. You may want to have to like leave Counterspell for a Treasure Cruise on turn 3 or 4.
Sure.
Which is a different consideration, but I think this is totally a valid line.
Well, I guess another consideration is I could play Pyromancer and Swords on one turn. Or Pyromancer and Brainstorm. But I'd really prefer to play Pyromancer
No matter
and
what,
Counterspell.
the line you're taking does allow you a lot of pivoting.
That's right.
2 on top.
Mm-hmm. I'm not sure what he's trying to mouth at me.
And Zach, who cannot hear anything we're saying, just confirms that we have 2 cards on top.
There is a threat.
So, do I want to play this? This is my only removal spell, so I want to play it with Counterspell backup. And it turns out to be good that I did.
Well, he's fighting over it. So.
Force removing days is a big win here,
Absolutely.
even if he counters this again.
Pyroblast. I think I don't brainstorm here. I know what my top card is, and there's not really anything I can draw except Force, and I'm not sure I force this because I have so much removal in my deck.
Yeah, there's not much you can hit that's upside, and then you just keep playing the days. And notice here that was another main deck Pyroblast, which has become an increasing trend in Legacy,
Absolutely.
especially post-cons.
But he
Cruise
I
is...
knew about that. It looks like... Oh, he gets to cruise this turn. That's pretty unfortunate. So he got to set up a big fight. Oh, okay. I definitely made a mistake here. I should have done this on his upkeep.
Oh, I see.
Like, not only do I get more information about his top of his library, but he wouldn't be able to cast both those spells.
Yeah, that's a correct observation. All 3 of us missed it, but if they have open mana available, it's more profitable to just pick a fight on their upkeep, make them tap out.
So given that I'm so behind on board, I think what I want to do is try to brainstorm. It's possible that I can dig through time this turn.
Maybe you get a Pyromancer to stabilize against a Swift Spear temporarily, and then hopefully get a second white to deal with the
Okay, that's...
So there's
Delver
merit
point.
to Young
Okay.
Pyromancer, then Brainstorm, just to try to clog things.
definitely true.
And he's tanking as though he has a Force of Will. And
Yep.
he does show you the Force of Will.
Another Days. So I've managed to play through Days, which is great.
that
that's
is
really
an
bad.
answer, but not the one that's going to help right now.
So next turn I have the option. I can dig in my upkeep if I don't want to draw any of these cards. I can Jace bounces Delver, which gives me a lot of time.
Well, you got a Pyroblast for that Delver too.
True. So I probably want to save Jason on a more stable board. I think what I can do is, since I really want to hit lands, I can dig in my upkeep, blast any potential force that he has, or save it for Delver. So I think I want to put back the two clunkiest cards besides Jace.
I think you might be able to get another turn without having to pick a fight on your upkeep. Maybe on his upkeep if you're committed to removing the Delver. And you would have Counterspell backup.
Okay, so you like this?
Well, I'm
and
not
then
sure.
draw
It's a difficult
Counterspell?
line. But
That's fair.
It also would allow you to hedge in case the Pyroblast does resolve, but his follow-up is a Treasure Cruise. Having the Counterspell available is a strong line.
Well, unfortunately, the way I tapped doesn't leave.
If he cruises this turn, you're just in trouble.
Well, he can. He's almost certainly going to.
We know he has a cruise, and
Okay.
he has the cards, so...
Yep. Yeah, so tapping the way I did means that if I lose the fight on Pyromancer and Brainstorm bricks, it's really bad.
It's interesting, in most decks, most control decks, you're brainstorming to hit removal, so you want to leave white up. But actually in this deck you play a couple bolts as well as Pyroblast for the Delver, so in retrospect, I guess the red would have been the removal color for this control deck.
Well, red had to cast Pyromancer,
Oh yes, that was what was precipitated the...
but if I had been able to pierce that Treasure Cruise, this game might have been winnable. At this point, I'm pretty sure that I'm losing.
You aren't locked out or anything yet, but you have a very uphill battle.
Yeah, I definitely don't want to draw any of the spells on top, which means
At this point.
At this point, I need to pick a fight on my upkeep.
Yeah, and he's already cruised, so there's not much more threatening he could be playing.
So, he's already forced twice and removed 2 days, so he is going to be
That's a
somewhat
start.
lighter on counters.
Force is good. I think I want to hit a land, though. So if I'm able to... Cool, so I can Swords with Pierce and Pyroblast backup. If I take... I'm at 10. Going to 9 is a pretty big swing. So I'll take Mountain and Swords.
I think you may want the Force.
I don't think so.
Oh, he's got 4 cards in hand. Okay, so you're going to play 2 removal spells and have... You have a draw for the turn as well.
Right. So,
Go to draw.
yep. Okay. The question is whether or not I want to leave Pierce up, or try to do it on my turn so that Pierce is live. I
Depends
think
on how
I
much
do.
value you think you're going to get out of it later.
Well, if you're committed to killing the Swiftspear, you might as well do it right now in case it doesn't work. But with the Delver, then you might want to do that on upkeep.
Well, no, because he can just force. I think this is the line that makes me the most resistant to Forcible.
Playing around Forcible is certainly strong at this point.
See, if I had done it on upkeep, wouldn't have
And
been
he
able to do
finished his
this.
3rd day, so he's unlikely to have another one.
Yeah, wow, he has not been able to
He
cast
is
days at
down
all.
6 counters, which is pretty amazing.
Alright. So now if you have a chance to jam a... You can read that he probably doesn't have a Pyroblast, or he probably won't hit your Spell Pierce, so...
Absolutely. Or days, obviously.
Yeah, so it's maybe a good time
2
to
cards.
jam the Jace next turn.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
And he's tanking on upkeep, so it's post Brainstorm. He's trying to figure out if he wants to draw that card, and he does.
So I imagine he has a bunch of burn in hand.
It's interesting because before that turn, when he set up the Brainstorm, but had the option of shuffling, he had a very strong board, and that may have changed what he valued for his next draw. But the situation changed before you draw, but he still decided to pick up that card anyway. Very likely to be burned.
These lists don't usually play days, so I'm comfortable. I do want Ponder. Do I want Jace? Jace dies, is that fine? think that's fine. Yeah. These lists don't usually have Spell Pierce, so I'm comfortable playing this Preordain here. If I hit a Pyroblast or a Spell Pierce, then I can try to force Jace through.
Yeah.
But
And
I think I want to...
represent red.
Yes.
And Spell Pierce being in decline is a manifestation of how Treasure Cruise has affected the meta. It lines up poorly against Treasure Cruise.
So you are going to get a Brainstorm, and then Jace is going to go away.
Yeah, so it's a tough call between Fate Sealing and Brainstorming here. The reason I went with Brainstorm is because I don't actually care that much if Jace dies. He just ate a bolt, and if he has a creature next turn, ooh, that was really good.
So he's
Yeah, I agree.
fetching on...
Jace is quite weak in this matchup between all the Pyroblast, Bolts, Swift Spears, and Young Pyromancers. Often if you could Brainstorm and get a Bolt that would have otherwise gone to your face, and perhaps even set off a Prowess trigger or created a Elemental token, it's often worthwhile if you could stabilize.
Absolutely. And I have plenty more Jaces, plenty more win conditions, just like the one I cantripped into. So next turn I'm going to have a pretty sick turn.
Down to 3 cards at this point.
Mm-hmm. Pyromancer's good, but mine's going to be better because I've
Gas.
so much gas. I want to Brainstorm first.
I think you ponder first in case he bolts, you could get more mileage.
Ooh, that's a good point. I forgot about that.
And as that did play out that way...
So that was a mistake. Not a snake.
That was a Brainstorm.
Wow, yeah. If I had done it the other order, would have been much better. So he has Cruise available, but I can't tag it with Spell Pierce, so I think I'm just going to ship it.
Another interesting line is I think if in case you want to play, he has 1 card in hand.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that was irrelevant then, but I was suggesting that if you want to play around Force of Will, doing on this upkeep would mean 1 token has
Ooh, you still got
No
a
haste.
card there.
for the turn.
So here I'm looking for more cantrips for next turn or Pyroblast.
Pyroblast would be excellent.
Yes,
Or it's pretty stable, you have stronger top decks. And more lands to work with.
absolutely. If I draw a dig, I'm quite happy about that. Jace is fine here. Spell Pierce might be able to tag a spell, but I'd rather not draw the other cards.
Agreed.
So I can play out this land, but I don't see a reason to. Go ahead.
Yeah.
I can hold it for Brainstorm.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, that's not good.
Oh
That
my.
was the
That was
best turn you
pretty
could
much, yeah, the worst possible. I really, really want to draw Banslayer next turn.
Thanks, there would be quite a draw.
Pyromancer's fine, but I have no more spells in hand.
He is going off a little bit here.
Mm-hmm.
And this is just something that the old Delver decks were never really capable of. It's reloading after presenting such pressure in the early game.
Definitely.
That's why blue-red is so popular now.
And Pyromancer is almost like a combo spell. It definitely is like that in Vintage.
It's wild.
Oh, jeez. Okay. So
It's
this was a pretty
officially
insane
turned
turn.
Ugly.
Yes. As before, I think it's definitely correct to just trade.
Yeah. And
So
then
you
hope
take
you rip a Banslayer right
1,
here.
you're down to 9.
Yep.
Alright, not Baneslayer.
He knows it too, and that was not Banslayer.
So we're at 9. He has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 damage without any other spells, so...
So playing that Brainstorm first was, I think, the critical mistake of this game. I could have stabilized the... because I could have Spell Pierced.
The bolt as well.
You're 4. Go ahead.
It's good.
Oh, that's step 1.
Alright. Alright, well, technically still about. And
Hail Mary time.
I think you need Banslayer or bust, so you need the 7th land here.
Yep, you're right. Guess it's...
I also think since you've
you are at
digged...
4, so I was about to say be careful of Bolt.
Yeah.
Although if he had Bolt, he would have just done it last turn and killed you. But
Top decks are always possible with that deck.
So Baneslayer does stabilize the board here, although I might not be able to attack with it.
And
What other outs do I have? I can...
You have not played a land yet?
I've not...
You'd have to ponder into a Brainstorm, I think. Your mana's too constrained.
Yeah, so... Not even sure...
Which card helps you most of the other 6?
Yeah. I guess at this point it doesn't really matter. Chance of me winning this game is pretty low.
Always play with your asshole. I do agree with keeping the Jace, because if you ever were to stabilize, that would play a big role in getting you ahead.
So Council's Judgment, again, worse than...
I think you would also have to tap with the Volcanic, because your out would have been brainstorming into 2 swords.
Okay. Yeah.
Alright, well, Zach's got this one.
Alright.
alright.
Alright, sweet.
Alright, so after some main board games, we're back here with Raka. Blue, white, red control.
Thank you. Yeah.
We're just going to start over here on this end and work our way down. So, over here, we have Flusterstorms, or in this case, Vurstorm.
Vurstorm! Yeah, it's pretty good against Storm.
As happens.
You can also bring it in against Stifle builds, but it's pretty tricky to find enough cards to cut.
Indeed. Moving over here, we have 1 red blast, 1 blue blast. The only thing of note I'm going to say, or I would bring up, is why would you not want this to be a Hydro Blast if you're running Pyroblast?
So the big point there is, against Sneak and Show, sometimes they have 1 or 2 misdirections. You can't misdirection Blue Blast to misdirection on the stack, because Blue Blast targets a red spell, whereas Hydro Blast counters a spell if it's red, which means that you can misdirect Hydro Blast to misdirection and fizzle it.
Yep. So just kind of a minor point, but a very important one. Red Blast, I suppose, is just in there for diversification against Meddling Mage or what have you.
Exactly.
Next we have Killer, Blood Moon here.
So I found the deck was pretty weak to strategies which didn't cast spells, or that cast spells that were all inherently 2-for-1s. So these decks include Dark Depths, Lands, Jund. Maverick can be tough, or maybe. It's probably worth bringing in. So all those decks just have a lot of inherent advantage that is really difficult to answer on the stack. So the best way that I found to answer it out of this deck is to just turn off their ability to either cast spells or combo off.
Yeah, and I mean, even, like, Lands and Jund you can completely blank for the most part with a well-timed Blood Moon. Even something like Maverick, like you were talking about, you take away their toolbox ability.
Mm-hmm. Stopping Wasteland is pretty important.
We have a couple of one-of white creatures here. Kor Firewalker, just good game against any deck that's playing red for the most part.
Mm-hmm. Very good against blue-red Delver. It basically moats them, gains a bunch of life. It's a little hard to cast. The other option here would be Nyx Fleece Ram, but I think that Ram is a little worse because it can get attacked and then bolted. It's close though.
Pro-red is kind of a big deal for Kor Firewalker being a playable good legacy card.
Definitely.
We have one of new guy, Containment Priest here.
Definitely does a lot of work. Shores up the Elves matchup, which I suspect is pretty bad. Haven't actually played it though. He also, of course, helps Reanimator, Show and Tell. I'm excited to try this one out. I haven't actually played with him yet.
He's interesting. I kind of want to see where he goes in the metagame as a whole. Next up, 3 Control All-Star, Vendilion Clique.
Mm-hmm. This one is pretty versatile. It's both a great threat against combo matchups, as well as a really, really good threat against Miracles. Miracles can be tough if they resolve Counterbalance or push through an Entreat, so this is another counterspell that's difficult to counterbalance against Miracles for the Entreat. It's also another way to just EOT, put in a threat, and start pressuring them. it's proven to be very good against them.
Indeed, just very versatile card. Moving on, we have one Supreme Verdict. Just does what it does very well.
And one Pyroclasm. This is the uncounterable one and the cheap one. I would like some more Wraths. I think these decks typically have some more. But with my own Pyromancers, I don't want to overload on that effect. So
Seems fair. We have one Wear Tear. Again, shore up just kind of a catch-all card against anything that it hits.
exactly. Great against Counterbalance.
And then the one off-color Surgical Extraction
Right.
here. Just mising that one, or didn't feel like Grafdigger's Cage was good enough grave hate?
Grafdigger's Cage definitely is a consideration, but it doesn't stop lands and Punishing Fire again. I think this deck is quite soft to those decks pre-board, so I really want to shore up those matchups.
So I guess you're saying that you're more worried about those kind of like grindy resource-based decks as opposed to something graveyard-based like Dredge.
Correct. This is good against Dredge.
Yeah, I mean, it still does work, but it's not quite to the blank that, Grafdiggers can be.
I found that Manaless Dredge is very difficult to beat because you just actually can't interact with them, apart from these two cards. But Dredge with mana, much easier. I've beat it before with this deck without even drawing that many hate cards. If you just counter their ways to put Dredge cards in the graveyard, it's pretty difficult for them to win.
Indeed. Alright, so we've gone through your sideboard. Let's get it sided up and play some more games.
Sounds good. Okay, so the pre-board matches didn't go as well as I had hoped. I think I had to play extremely tight to be able to win, which indicates to me that it's probably pretty bad. I noticed the Council's Judgment sucked, so...
It's quite bad. They might bring in Vortex, though, so you have your Wear Terror, which did not hit anything else otherwise. You got your Blue Blast. Kor Firewalker is excellent.
So these are the considerations. I don't like Wear Terror because the only thing it hits is Vortex.
It would be much better in a counterbalance show because it's a 1 and 2, but otherwise no. I think Supreme Verdict might be on the slow side, but maybe necessary concession. Flusterstorm, I think, is unlikely to tag. It's like a counter war backup. I don't think it's likely to tag anything. Maybe like a turn that involves a lot of cantripping into crews.
I'm fine with it. I'm not sure I'll have enough things to cut.
Yeah. I certainly give consideration cutting all 3 Jaces.
Yep, that's definitely a consideration. I have 5 ways to win.
Given how long these games go, you are able to put up a good long fight. I do think Supreme Verdict is just fine.
Maybe a Jace or 2. Well, I think a lot of his stabilizing involves Young Pyromancer anyway, which I guess doesn't work with Pyroplasm either.
Yeah, Jace was pretty abysmal. Counterspell is also pretty bad.
I agree.
Force is fine, but not exciting.
I would have kept in Counterspell if you didn't have Blue Blast, but I actually think Force is decent here because it's so tempo-oriented early.
I think Pierce is better than
So with those 5,
Flusterstorm.
that gives you that, at least.
No,
With Flusterstorm being on the fence.
Flusterstorm's probably slightly better except for the possibility of Vortex or I guess you're not susceptible to Nido or No Rod.
Okay, so maybe I just hope to dodge Vortex or force it.
Yeah, and then you always got Blue Blast, which is not ideal, but...
It's worth considering cutting a land. I'm a little bit land heavy in my main configuration for a deck that isn't plain Wasteland. But maybe I just can't afford to be spending mana to find lands.
I do think that is a consideration. You also just need to be... Your deck wants to be able to cast Baneslayer with Daze backup.
What about Clique just to block Delver?
It's worth considering, but I don't think it's better than any of the cards in my deck.
Certainly not the Pyroclasm, the 2 Blasts, or the Kor Firewalker. My consideration is the question marks I have are on the Supreme Verdict and the Flusterstorms, and I think you're right, those are probably better than the Cliques.
It's more removal, but it's slow, and
It is slow.
it trades, but nothing else.
We are back for for the sideboarded games. Once again, I'm just going to keep saying it. Rock Delver Control, Delve Control.
That's
versus, UR Delver.
I died horribly, so I'm gonna play first. And
this seems perfectly acceptable.
yes, I think I want to leave up Lightning Bolt. It does play into Daze. Maybe that's the reason not to.
Well, actually, if you get a Swift Spear dazed, if he dazes on a turn 1 Swift Spear, it's actually quite good for you because it's less powerful in the subsequent turns, and you could develop your turns 2, 3, and 4 pretty easily.
Okay.
Fetch, and there's a
It's a
Swift
bit
Spear.
awkward if he probes into daze, though.
He fetches now. Does he have the days? Nope.
He
So
doesn't. Okay, that was very lucky, I think.
that worked out about as we
Well,
wanted to.
also you're on the draw, and you're on the play, and
He might board out Daze against me. I definitely board out Daze as Delver playing against most control decks, especially if they've shown that they play around it, which I think I did last game.
yeah. I certainly think you play around it if you could afford to, but I do not mind getting dazed on turn 1 in that situation.
Well, this definitely punishes that. I like swords. I really want to hit a land though.
Yeah.
So
There we go.
That's still something to tank on, but I think it's good enough to keep.
yeah, it sets me up for
Pretty quick dig territory here.
yeah, exactly, for digging pretty shortly.
If he plays any threat and you sword it, you are able to dig.
That would be ideal.
On
Next turn, I
turn.
really want to play Pyromancer into swords.
Yeah.
So I
And-
hope it lines up that way.
And I think even getting a Pyromancer bolted isn't the end of the world because it's just another card to allow you
Mhm.
to dig, and it presumably forces his action on his turn if he decides to cantrip or something here.
Yeah. So the thought with this deck is the first Pyromancer dies and makes a token, basically, which buys me time to basically dig into the next one.
That's interesting.
Good. I'm not expecting that. Not expecting their removal to be dead.
Mhm.
Weissman, the creator of the first control deck, which this deck is pretty similar to, I think, famously said that he never wanted to cut Sarah Angel because that forced his opponent to have bad cards in their deck. And I think it's a really similar thought here.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And I think even if this gets staged, you're fine. You know, I got a chump blocker, and he loses tempo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this was a great sequence for me. I've got the Supreme Verdict, which is pretty awkward. I'm going to miss an land drop next turn unless I dig. Okay.
I mean, fortunately, you do have another sword sitting on top, so...
Yes.
Well, can
So
you afford to play around days is the question. I think digging will allow you to hit your land drop too, so...
I agree. So digging is definitely correct here first. So we found Banslayer and Island, and I'm pretty sure that's what I'm going to keep in the blind. Flusterstorm is worth considering, but I already have a removal spell. I'm just going to take these two.
Yeah, I don't think you could play around a cruise right now. He's already,
He's fueled up.
yeah.
Yeah, the question is if I want to do it on his turn. I don't think so. Like, he could have Flusterstorm.
The downside is if he forces, he just gets an extra 1/1 to beat with next turn, but that's able to attack, but I
Right.
think it's worthwhile just to sword right here.
Like, he could also Brainstorm or some other effect. So next turn I want to... What do I want to do?
I think you maybe
Mhm.
just stand back depending on how much pressure he puts on the board. And the best pressure you can put right here is Swift Spear because you get an attack
Mhm.
while without committing too much on the board.
That was good. So I think the question is whether or not I block. I'm just going to Verdict next turn. There's no reason to take the damage.
I agree.
Verdict puts me closer to being able to dig. So I drew Force. That's pretty good.
Certainly not the worst draw.
Mm-hmm.
You could. I don't think it would have been right, but you could also consider passing the turn. You take a maximum of 2 damage unless you have Swift Spear, and you would have Force with the ability to play around Dave's effects if he tried to cruise, but it looks like he doesn't have it.
And
So-
with that draw, we're in a holding pattern.
That's right. If he now I have an opportunity to play Dig end of turn and untap into Banslayer, which I think is a pretty strong sequence. It also gives me a chance to draw a blue card for this Force in my hand.
You can also just hardcast Force and bait out a Daze if he has one, and then play Baneslayer.
That's also true. It depends what he plays. I think I want to be playing this Force proactively. I'd rather just be proactive now because he's on the back foot.
Yeah.
Also, Swords is basically free because it creates a spell that goes into the graveyard.
Sure. I think you're ecstatic if he
He's
forces
thinking
here.
of this.
Absolutely. He might be saving Force for the Stig. Ah, Pyroblast. Okay.
So he still could have Force, because if he was thinking about that Swords.
I think it's worthwhile just going to sit back right here.
Just jam.
And there it is.
Okay, so definitely Shawn has a valid point that maybe I should sit back and try to hit another red source or another blue card for Force.
Well, I was most scared of Cruise, and I feel like you were at a high enough life total where you just wait. But certainly that deck also draws very strongly, so you may not be able to wait. And it looks like you're not punished for cruising yet.
Brainstorm probably correct here. Again, this deck brainstorms very aggressively. I think I want to... What do I want to do? I don't have 2 red sources, so these blasts are not live this turn. Definitely playing this.
That puts you in a good situation.
Absolutely.
Now, if he had removal here, is it worthwhile to either force or cantrip just to get an extra token?
One of those 2 is correct. I'm not sure which one.
I'm always a fan of cantripping, just because there's the off chance you get a blue card and get to Force anyway and get 2 tokens.
Well, you know the top two cards are both Pyroblast, so it's a bit awkward here. But if you Brainstorm next turn and miss on land, you can't hardcast Force Will, which is also bad.
I'm pretty sure I want to Force because at this point my best threat against him besides Kor Firewalker is dead. So I'm going to be banking on a Pyromancer at some point. I just want to make it as hard as possible for him.
Alright, this is good because now you're Pyroblast for life.
Yes.
And it...
So, because we had already thought about this... Okay. Fair enough.
We now have 2 squirrels.
He's dead?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was thinking it might have been worthwhile to see what he flips on the Delver in case he reveals a cruise, in which case...
But I wanted to attack with it, and he would certainly block. Oh. Here I'm just taking a conservative line. I'm definitely not the aggressor in this matchup. He's 1 card in hand. I think I blast this. Like, maybe that's a little too aggressive if he has a cruise especially.
I think if he had a cruise, he might have led with it.
Ooh, that was very good. So, there's
literally
no spell
building.
he could be holding.
This is a good deck building, as Greg will now be able to play the Kor Firewalker and gain a life off his Pyromancer.
Yes.
Excellent sequencing.
We go back up to 17.
My attacks are shut off? Is that true?
No, you have
could
protection
tap
from
with the
red.
Firewalker, but
Yeah, but the question is
it's
if
not
I
worth-
want to.
I don't think it's worthwhile.
I'm not sure. Like, he has 1 card in hand, he could draw... He can maybe chain spells together, but if he does that, I just chump. I think I do want to be on the aggressive. Like,
Actually, yeah, no, I think you're right being aggressive. You could chump, and you got a Pyromancer. If he bolts your Pyromancer, you gain another life. So
Yeah.
we gain a life from that, so we're up
Yep.
to 18.
Kor Firewalker is a really powerful card in these matchups. It's,
Yeah, it's a one of, but if I draw it, it's very, very good.
I pretty much never play Modern, but I did play Blue-Red Who's Burn once with White Splash, and Kor Firewalkers held off let's see, 2 Swift Spears, 2 Snapcasters, a Delver, and a Young Pyromancer all by itself.
Mm-hmm.
Gave me 20 life in the course of the turn, and this plays out very similarly.
Oh man.
Sure. So he's got a 3/4. At this point, I'm not sure that I block.
He could have an Electrickery, which is the best thing you could have to push damage through.
So I'm at 18
Right.
to his 7. Him attacking puts him... so I can attack for 6 next turn, which means he can't use his fetch, which means he can't hardcast Force. I think I don't even block, but the other option is I chump here and then it puts him on a 2-turn clock because he's on a 2-turn clock anyway. If he plays another creature, Swift Spear is the only one I care about, but if he played... Okay. I think I chump to preserve life total. I'm fine with this. So now it's not a 2-turn clock, but...
This is excellent.
And,
I already did it.
okay.
Move this in for.
So these... Play this land, plow this. Right now I'm the aggressor, yeah.
He goes up to 9 and.
Alright. Score 1 for the blue-white-red controller. Which I think is reasonable.
It's a removal spell that's also a hedge. It's fine. It's not exciting.
Yeah, I guess because what's it called? Vortex screwed you so hard.
I do think this is the first non-2-land hand you get to keep.
Right. I think you fired off that recent top deck at the first opportunity.
Absolutely.
It's not getting any better.
I won't do it on Ponder, but I will do it on... So now I have an interesting choice. I think that since I only have...
The worry is that he has Gadaxian Probe, which he does.
So I can play around Daze and Force Will by waiting until my turn, but I don't get to Pyroblast Cruise. How close is he to Cruise?
He has
He's not
one card
close.
in his graveyard. Well, he will have 2.
And a
So
third
we're
one
gonna
when you
wait.
kill the, assuming you kill the.
I don't know.
I mean, you
I
have.
think
you
I
have both
bolt here.
Flusterstorm and Pyroblast though.
He's... The decision was... he doesn't know my hand right now, but he will in the future.
Yeah.
And he's unlikely to have Daze put forward.
Flusterstorm, eh?
Alright, so that means our Flusterstorm is going to be good. No, just-
It's a tell, right?
Generally, when they comment on your wacky sideboard card, even though Flusterstorm isn't particularly wacky,
I think it's probably a hand that has a treasure cruise and a way to protect it, but not through a Flusterstorm.
Do I? I don't think I do it on... I don't think I fire off Flusterstorm or Pyroblast on Ponder. Pyroblast is good as a hard counter for Cruise
Not a,
or Delver, but Flusterstorm, I want to hit a Brainstorm or something.
Yeah. And it's less scary if they don't have like a Swift Spear, well now they do, and or a Pyromancer to back up the Ponder.
Fortunately, I drew the Sword Splashers for turn.
Yep.
So I'm at 18.
I'm gonna check. I forgot.
Okay. Done?
Okay, so go ahead.
only slightly illegal, but will allow it.
So I'm pretty far from Dig. I really want him to cast spells. Maybe that's an argument for firing off this Flusterstorm. I'll certainly fire off Flusterstorm at the next thing I can.
Well, just to fetch that away from Dig.
Yeah, they get to dig mana scarily fast. If he has Brainstorm, I'd love to Pyroblast it.
That'll do.
I'll Flusterstorm this one. Mm-hmm. Another one. At this point, I want to Pyroblast basically anything. Although maybe I don't, because...
Well, he doesn't have too much pressure, so that's the...
Oh, I will gladly Pyroblast this.
Sure.
If he has Treasure Cruise, that's pretty bad. He probably does. It's pretty bad. Yeah, well, that's unfortunate. Breaking on lands there was unfortunate, but at least he doesn't have much pressure on you.
Kor Firewalker off the top.
So Firewalker does seem like
Ooh.
the best card right now.
How many cards?
I think getting your land drops is more important right now.
Okay. Yeah, next turn I can Pyromancer into Dig. And he probably didn't draw a dude, otherwise he would have cast it last turn. So that means he probably has Burn.
He might
or
have hit
Force.
into a Pyromancer, which he just couldn't have cast last turn given his mana.
Oh, that's a good point.
It's also likely he's holding Blast because you haven't given an opportunity to hit anything but the Ponder yet.
Hmm. All valid considerations. That token has done work. It's done
Chipping
3
away.
damage.
It's a Lala Spike.
Yeah. For basically free. Can't ask for much more than that.
No,
So-
now hopefully you'll have your tokens too.
Right. It's good.
You just come at me.
There goes away our Pyromancer, but we can
Oh.
block his...
He might have a follow-up too.
Yep. So, as we suspected, he's on all reactive cards. But that's fine. We know what's on top. It's another mountain. I'm 1 card away from casting another Dig. Which means if he casts any threat at all, I'm going to Council's Judgment it, and then next turn, Dig through time.
Yeah, that sounds like a strong line. Fortunately, he hasn't had too much pressure.
Yeah, exactly.
What you're hoping to avoid is a cruise. Sulfuric Vortex would not be great, but you have the Council Judgment.
Mm-hmm. I'd like to point out that in these games I've not played around Price of Progress or Blood Moon at all. I don't think I've been able to, and I think that's part of the deck building consideration by playing all these red spells. It means that I'm much less a blue-white deck splashing red for blast so much as a straight 3-color deck, which makes the mana much worse.
Mm-hmm. But it's justifiable in this meta because so many blue decks are splashing red now, and Wasteland is less prevalent than I've ever seen it in this format.
It's not good.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry. Yep. Play this. Okay, well that's the best we could have asked for with Council's Judgment.
Yeah, that's
Indeed.
pretty much the only reason you brought it in.
Mm-hmm. Left it in, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yep. Okay, so I would love to hit... Ooh, tough choice here.
It's not the worst thing to draw, it's just when to do it.
I'm at 13. I think... I don't know. So, he could have cast any creatures he had. What would I be... I would be looking for a land and a removal spell. I think those are both likely enough that this is fine.
Are we hard casting a force?
Okay.
So if you weren't digging for a land, which you were, the option would have been to upkeep the dig through time, but since
Exactly.
you did want to hit the land, then that was the right line.
Right.
But
It also means he doesn't get a scry with his Delver.
Yeah.
Not super relevant, but...
it's a thing, and also it tells you he doesn't have a blast.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I'm not too far away from casting this next dig. Oh,
Right.
and I get a lot of value. Ah, yes. So sequencing this way
It worked
worked out pretty well.
Ooh,
Wow.
all kinds of gas.
Unfortunately, I can't cast both this turn. It's certainly correct to cast
Yes.
Verdict before I cast my creature.
Yes.
I'm not sure, Greg.
Daggers.
His facial expression was priceless.
The shatter paws from Zach over there.
Such daggers.
For those of you who are unaware, Greg Mitchell is the master of the one-of in his deck construction and drawing it when he needs it, especially the ones that tilt his opponents the most.
Oh. Ooh.
Not good,
Ooh.
but so I can go to 4. I can. How many cards? 3. All right, he's tapped out now. I'm just gonna cast Dig.
Yeah, and Clique clearly doesn't have Red Blast and can't even represent it at this point.
Yeah, I'll play around price what little I can. At least now, if he Blood Moons me, I have all of my colors.
Yeah.
Way to be positive.
I'm not saying it's good.
He gets fairly constrained by a Blood Moon at this point too. He has all 4 of his Volcanics.
True. He hasn't played around price or Blood Moon at all either. So, some of those tells, I wonder if I just like pick up without thinking about them. It's pretty obvious when someone plays around Blood Moon.
Rice.
So the question is Brainstorm or Pyromancer, or Brainstorm or Swords, and I think it's actually that's pretty tough.
I think it's the Brainstorm because he did not follow up with a creature and Brainstorm. This guy holds off a lot of his threats. Two of his Delvers are gone at least.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I have a lot more removal in my deck than I have Brainstorms. That's good. I really would like to hit a Banslayer. A common Sane in this matchup.
Uh-oh.
No follow-up to Pyromancer. That surprises me a bit.
Try a reactive spell in his hand.
S-
Plasma first.
Pyroclasm is
Certainly.
quite funny here. And that reaction from Zach was exactly why, because he can cast all the cantrips he wants and gets all of the tokens, but Pyroclasm does a good job of cleaning that up.
Yep. I don't think I cast Brainstorm here because I have nothing I want to put back.
Agreed.
Yeah. Alright.
Overloaded it.
Turn daggers.
I could have, like, Brainstormed into Flusterstorm here, but I don't think I care that much.
You also bottomed your second Flusterstorm off the dig, so that was not going to happen.
So, Drawing Force is great here.
It is.
What would I force? I'm out of Wraths.
I would actually force that.
Yep, I guess I would just force literally anything.
Okay, we need to replace the sleeve, but you can carry on while everything is going on.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
At least he doesn't, poo.
well, we're going super aggro now.
Yeah. Okay.
He red blasted your.
He red blasted the force, and now he's bolting in the face and, you
Yep.
know, doing the Swift
I
Spear
forgot what
thing.
card it was.
It's one of the Volcanics.
Just good.
Yep. Oh no.
I think that
Am I dead?
You're awfully close.
Okay.
You're at 6, you're at 5.
If he has another bolt. Oh wow.
Wow, daggers.
Ugh.
I mean, I guess you brainstorm.
Okay. Good games.
Good games. Good games.
They were. I hope they weren't too slow.
No, you guys played really fast. The deck itself seems to be slow, just
Yes.
in that like you don't have any engine other than to just look at 7 cards and pick 2 of them. I definitely felt a lot of games you would have sealed up with a Snapcaster or 2 because
Yep.
you would have gotten to kill a guy and have a blocker, and then you have a lot more time from there.
Absolutely. I definitely don't think that Treasure Cruise would have been good. It just would have taken too many cards away. But Snapcaster would have been great.
Yeah, it always felt like you were delving your graveyard pretty empty.
Mm-hmm.
So that was definitely true. That Pyroclasm, I couldn't even hold my tongue on that. I was holding 3 bolts, and I just wanted to bolt you 3 times in response to a Swords to Plowshares and have 3 tokens and put you at 2, and it was just like, Pyroclasm. I can never beat that.
Yeah, feeling the post-board games, I definitely felt like I wanted more Pyroclasms. I just wanted more Wraths. The Council's Judgment was pretty bad. It was great as getting rid of the Sulfuric Vortex, but maybe Engineered Explosives is better.
Yeah, and I kept thinking every time you played Young Pyromancer, what it would be like if it was a Stoneforge Mystic.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. And it definitely felt like it was of a similar power level in the deck, and then it really was dependent on like what kind of removal your opponent was holding.
Mm-hmm.
I guess like the only thing I can think of that would really push it for Stoneforge's favor is like the deck is hard to board against. Like versus Miracles, you take out all the bolts and the fork bolts and stuff, and here I had to keep them in.
Yeah.
So if you board it, if you have Stoneforges, then you also force me to bring in like Smash to Smithereens, which are sometimes dead, or like Pithy Needles or whatever else you have on the board. So
that's true, but I think that like even if you just hold Smash in hand for a while, and I eventually try to play Batterskull, and you smash it, like you're still way far ahead.
Well, I'm more talking about the games where like I have Smash and you don't have Batterskull, you just plop a Banslayer Angel into play. Whereas like a Bolt is still good there because I could just like, maybe bolt you for lethal or double bolt or whatever. The Smash is just like stone dead in the face of that. So
yeah, that's a fair point.
That's all I can think of. But I mean, the Young Pyromancers are definitely going to be better versus like any Tarmogoyfs or Mongooses that are running around. So there's that.
We noticed that I wanted to draw Baneslayer a lot, which makes me wonder if I should just have a second, because then I wouldn't be so worried about just jamming the first in there.
Mm-hmm.
Like if it gets forced, that's fine.
Right. I could see a case for that. I mean, it's definitely very powerful. When I was playing Bug Delver against you, it was definitely just a card I could never beat.
Absolutely.
So yeah, Baneslayer, Legacy, All-Star.
But just to summarize my thoughts about the matchup, Game 1 I felt like I had to play extremely tight to even have a chance, and I still lost. There were some different decisions we could have made, but you're certainly favored Game 1. Game 2, it's closer, but I'm not even sure that I'm favored at all, or if I am by much. Which makes me wonder if this is a good deck to play.
Yeah, I had kind of had the feelings Games 1 and the post-board games that, in the past versus Miracles, you're trying to outrace them establishing a lock or just putting like a lethal retreat on the field. And in games like this, I felt like a lot of times I could just play draw go with you for a number of turns and wait till I could like defend a Treasure Cruise and play a Swift Spear in the same turn, and that you weren't gonna lock me out or necessarily outrace me in the meantime. So it felt like it was pretty even, and maybe you're just missing like another Haymaker, like a Baneslayer, to sort of pressure me to make some bad plays and throw away a little value. So
yeah.
But yeah, the deck is definitely sweet. Like,
oh, absolutely.
And every time you're looking at 7 cards, I just feel terrible. So
yeah, I did break a lot off Dig, the pre-board games, but yeah, it definitely puts your opponent like feeling like they're really far behind.
Yeah. All right. Well, great matches. We hope to have you back. Thanks a lot,
you.
Greg.
Yeah, I'd love to be on.